Lily Clark was just 5 when she unwittingly altered the destiny of 2 worlds with a slice of bread. She had no inkling that morning that a gesture of goodwill would reduce an entire tribe to their knees by dawn. But when she came out of her family's general store and saw a silent, observant figure standing behind the wooden barrels, something within her stirred. The figure was a girl, small, barefoot, and no more than a year or so older than Lily herself. Her long black hair fell like a curtain over her face, and her eyes, dark and deep, watched the townspeople as they went by, yet no one appeared to notice her. The sun was setting low, casting long shadows over the dirty main street when Lily first saw her. People walked by with quick steps and downcast eyes, consciously avoiding the silent figure huddled in the corner like a discarded shadow. In the store, Lily had been assisting her mother to set bolts of fabric in order when the quiet outside drew her attention. The girl's clothing was worn thin and frayed, her feet bare against the splintered wood, but it was the way she stood that caught Lily's breath. She wasn't sitting. She was fading, attempting to blend into the dust and remain unobserved. Lily's grip on her lunch, a chunk of bread and cheese wrapped for her by her mother, tightened. She observed the girl's eyes lingering wistfully on a woman carrying pies from the bakery. The hunger in that glance was unmistakable, even for a child. Then her father, Samuel, emerged from behind the counter, his boots clomping against the floor. His eyes narrowed at the sight of the native girl hiding behind the barrels. "Lily, come in," he instructed curtly. "That one doesn't belong." But Lily did not budge. Her heart thumping, she remained transfixed, staring at the girl, who now braced herself for refusal. Her bony hands pushed against her belly, a gesture that Lily knew all too well. She had seen it on her own belly in cold winter when food got scarce. The girl's eyes locked into Lily's, and in that momentary contact, something intangible but strong passed between them. Fear? Yes, but hope. Sarah, Lily's mother, entered the room, wiping her hands on her apron, her voice laced with concern. "Samuel, what's wrong?" But the response was already forming in the strained silence between father and daughter. The Indian child started to get up, silent and cautious, as a deer in alarm. She pulled a threadbare shawl more tightly around her shoulders, ready to run, until Lily moved out from behind it. Her little bare feet moved softly upon the wooden floorboards. She held out lunch. "Are you hungry?" she asked. The words lingered in the hot air like incense, delicate and reluctant to dissipate. Samuel took a sharp breath. Sarah's hand shot up to her throat. The girl stood locked, eyes wide on the bread as though it could disappear. She gazed between Lily's open palm and the adults standing behind her, balancing something intangible. Samuel moved forward, speaking softly. "Lily, back away now." But Lily stood firm. She left her hand extended, gaze unwavering. "Mama cooked extra. You can have mine." The girl's lips opened a little, no voice, just the shadow of one long stilled. Some of the townsmen had said she couldn't talk. She let her eyes move to the food, and Lily saw the struggle on her face. Hunger warring with fear, need pitted against prudence. Sarah shifted alongside Lily, crouching down to the level of the girl with gentle sympathy. "What's your name, sweetie?" There was silence for a very long moment, except for the wind hushing between the wooden structures. Then, almost too quietly, the child said something, her first word in this place. "Ayana." It was a name that filled the air like running water, soft, liquid, and unfamiliar to their ears. Lily repeated it softly. "Ayana, that's lovely." Even Samuel's hard face flickered at the sound. He'd never actually heard the girl talk before. Something about the instant broke through the tension accreted over the years of distance and suspicion. Ayana's belly rumbled loudly, making her need obvious. Lily, feeling the gravity of the moment, set the bread down gingerly on the barrel and stepped back. "It's really good," she said softly. "Mama makes the best bread." Ayana crept along with the wariness of a wild animal who didn't know whether she was safe. She extended a hand for the food, her fingers shaking. When she brought the first bite to her mouth, her eyes filled with tears. The flavor had to have been so strong, a reminder of what she'd lacked. "She's just a little girl," Sarah whispered to her husband, her voice heavy with feeling. Samuel remained silent, observing his daughter take a seat next to Ayanna, talking softly of her preferred types of bread. Ayanna sat quietly, nodding occasionally, but also not saying anything besides her name. As the shadows stretched out upon the earth, no one saw the figure on the ridge over town. An elder rode horseback, still. He observed the scene there outside the general store with the solemnity of one observing prophecy. What he beheld would ride back with him to the tribal council and make all else seem different. For by morning, the tribe would respond to the girl's generosity. The morning arrived in an unsettling stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Lily had woken already, her small hands on the window pane, gazing over the vacant seat where Ayanna had rested the previous day. It seemed amiss with her absence. Downstairs, Samuel was keeping an eye on the store when a noise brought him to a halt. A deep thud, soft at first, then steady and increasing. He moved outside, and his heart ceased. Riding down the main street was a procession unlike the town had ever witnessed. Chief Running Bear brought them up, his face somber but not cruel. 12 elders came after him, their horses perfectly aligned. They all carried presents, blankets embroidered with hues of twilight, carvings that glinted with devotion, pottery inscribed with narratives older than the edifices they rode past. But at the heart of the column was what they carried that caused Samuel to step back. Sarah stepped out beside him, Lily grasping her mother's skirt. "What do they want?" Sarah questioned, her tone quiet. The parade came to a halt before the general store. Chief Running Bear slid from his horse in one smooth motion and stood facing Samuel. The tension between them was heavy with all that had never been said, years of fear and mistrust and silence. But this day, that silence was going to be shattered. "Peacefully I have come, my people," the chief replied, his tone steady and his English deliberate but precise. "We have come to pay respect to your daughter." Before either parent had a chance to respond, Lily walked forward, her blue eyes wide in wonder as she gazed upon the colorful presents borne by the tribal elders. "Did you come to visit Ayanna?" she asked, her voice bell clear with unguarded wonder. Chief Running Bear's weathered, wisdom-etched face softened. "Ayanna is my granddaughter," he stated. "Yesterday, she spoke for the first time in moons. She told us of the white child who shared her food and treated her as family." The words hit Samuel like a slap. He had taken for granted, as everyone had, that the quiet child outside his shop was a roving orphan, abandoned or lost. But now the reality swelled like an ocean. Ayanna belonged to the most respected man in all the region. The heaviness of that knowledge altered everything. Alongside him, Sarah's hand grasped his arm and closed in a gentle squeeze, as realization dawned. Their daughter hadn't simply practiced charity. She'd reached out her heart to the granddaughter of a tribal chief. And what the chief shared next would take this little act of kindness and turn it into a moment that would ripple far beyond town borders. The chief looked at the gifts, his creased hand gesturing for them, but his gaze remained fixed on Lily. "Ayanna lost her voice when her parents went into the spirit world last winter," he spoke softly. "The medicine men said her words went with them into the stars." Sarah's breath was caught, and Samuel's throat constricted in unexpected emotion. The vision of this quiet, reserved child now weighed upon her so heavily, such profound grief that it had taken her voice. "But yesterday," the chief went on, "she returned home telling us about a girl with golden hair and kind eyes. She described to us how your daughter shared food, stories, and made her feel seen again." He hesitated, his eyes respectful. "She told me your child's heart was so pure, it recalled her voice from where the dead live." Lily crept forward, running her fingers softly over a hand-woven blanket. "Is Ayanna better now? Will she return?" For the first time since they had arrived, Chief Running Bear smiled. "She is with the elders, learning to speak again. And all she talks of is you, little one. You reminded her that kindness can still be found in this world." An elder moved forward with something that made the crowd draw breath. It was a battle shield, but not a token of conflict. Its painted surface glowed with holy patterns, and at its center was the picture of two children. One golden-haired, one dark-braided, their hands clasped together in solidarity. "These were my father's, and his father's before him," said the chief. "They've kept our family safe for generations. Today we present them to your daughter, not as a weapon, but as a vow." Samuel's voice caught in emotion. "Chief, we can't accept something so precious. Lily was only being generous. Any child would have no." The chief cut in, stern but not cruel. "Not any child. Most of your people get out of the street when they see my granddaughter. They talk of curses and ghosts because she didn't talk. But your daughter, she only saw a child who needed to be rescued." The people that surrounded them had increased, overflowing the stores and houses, attracted by the unusual sight. Samuel saw faces he recognized, many of whom had once whispered the native girl's name, who had shunned her like a shadow in sunlight. Lily gazed up at her father, her little brow creased. "Papa, why didn't people assist Ayanna? She was starving and sorrowful." The question fell like a stone into calm water, causing ripples across each heart in attendance. Sarah knelt beside her daughter, tucking a loose lock of hair behind Lily's ear. Her voice shook. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people forget kindness doesn't require permission." Another elder spoke quietly to the chief in their native language. Chief Running Bear nodded gravely, then spoke to the gathered crowd. "For years we have observed your town. We know who steps across the street when our children are passing. We know who talks venom about our practices. We know who would watch us disappear." His gaze ran over their faces with measured calmness, pausing for a fleeting instant on those such as Bradley and his supporters, whose hands had helped to maintain the communities apart for so long. "But yesterday," the chief went on, "a little girl reminded us that hate does not grow in the hearts of children. Hate is learned by those who have forgotten their own hearts can love." He moved forward and gently took Lily's tiny hands in his own. "Little one, will you take the hand of friendship from my people?" Lily nodded with no hesitation. "Yes, sir. And tell Ayanna she can have my lunch anytime." The chief's eyes shone. He extended a hand to take up the ceremonial shield to present to Lily, when a clear voice sliced through the silence like a knife. "Now wait just a minute." Tom Bradley pushed his way to the front, accompanied by a clutch of notable men. His tone dripped with authority, but his words stank of terror. "We thank you for the thought, Chief, but we can't have this sort of understanding setting a precedent." Samuel bristled. He recognized these men. They were the very same who'd cautioned him about getting too close. They constructed walls and profited from fear and distance. Chief Running Bear did not flinch, but the mood changed. The elders of the tribe shifted their horses, creating an uneasy but undeniable buffer about their leader. "My daughter was kind to a child," Samuel blurted, speaking more firmly than he had intended. "I will not apologize for that." Bradley's face grew red. "Consider what you're doing, Samuel. Your store is open to all. You politicize now and you'll lose customers, good Christian customers, the kind that's kept your doors open." Lily pulled on her mother's skirt once more. "Mama, why is that man angry?" Ayanna was hungry. The question fell like a spark to dry tinder. Sarah put an arm around her daughter. "Some folks, baby, forget kindness comes with no strings attached." Chief Running Bear faced the crowd again. "We know who among you treat us as shadows. But yesterday, one small girl reminded us that light exists in even the smallest hands." He raised the shield, ready once again to present it to Lily. But Tom Bradley stepped in, his words weighed with threat. "You display that thing in your shop, Samuel, and don't count on seeing another dollar from good people." All was in the balance. Samuel Clark stood at a crossroads, not for his family alone, but for his town, for the fine line between fear and decency, between what had always been and what might finally change. And in that instant, he needed to make up his mind. Would he obey the subtle threat of complacency, or the vociferous reality of a child's pity? Bradley's threat hung in the air like the smoke from a prairie fire. silent but deadly, threatening to reduce all Samuel Clark had worked for to ashes if he would take the wrong path. He gazed down at Lily, still grasping tightly to Chief Running Bear's wrinkled hands with unbreakable faith. She was unaware that her simple gesture of sharing bread could jeopardize their living, their store, even their reputation in a town they had lived in for 5 years. Sarah followed her husband, her silence stronger than words. She had grown up among the hushed warnings and seen the neighbors draw together when conversation turned to the tribes living just across the river. But she had seen something unbreakable in her daughter, an uncorrupted, natural kindness untroubled by adults' fear and judgment, armor that they wore. And she would not allow that innocence to be tainted. "You're being foolish, Samuel," Bradley urged, feeling the reluctance. "Your family relies on this store. Consider Lily's future. You truly want her to grow up poor, all because you couldn't see beyond one immature moment." The words hit hard, striking the most vulnerable places in any dad's heart. Samuel felt the burden of his community bearing down. Known faces, some with silent backing, others with suspicion or barely concealed disdain. These were his customers, his neighbors, the ones who'd embraced them once, and could turn on them with equal speed. Chief Running Bear did not move, reading Samuel's turmoil as if he knew the terrain well. "We will not impose friendship where it is not needed," the chief murmured. "If your people continue to favor the old ways, we will leave." He started to drop the ceremonial shield. And then something unlooked for occurred. Mrs. Henderson, the town's retired schoolteacher, moved forward through the throng. Her voice cut clear and firm through the morning stillness. "Tom Bradley, you don't represent all of us," she stated, not blinking. "I've taught kids in this town for 3 decades, and I've never witnessed anything more lovely than what that little girl did yesterday." She looked at Lily, tears brimming in her eyes. "Honey, you taught us what courage truly is." Her words broke something apart. Others started talking one by one. The wife of the baker spoke about how Ayanna used to sit silently alongside her shop, never made any trouble, only looked on with silent hope. A young father spoke about how his son had once asked why the little native girl looked so sad all the time. The tide was turning, but Bradley, flaming red and quivering, wasn't finished yet. "Beautiful words won't put food on your children's plates when adversity strikes," he snarled. "Friendliness won't halt the next battle. You're thinking this makes a difference? You're idiots if you think it does." The tension instantly grew heavy, perilous. Samuel could sense it building, could see the fire in the chief's eyes. One false move now, one ill-fated word or movement, and this tenuous moment would collapse into something no one could mend. Then Samuel Clark made his decision. He moved forward, putting his hands on the shield next to Chief Running Bear's, and said in a voice that could be heard by all, "My daughter taught me something yesterday," he said. "She reminded me that sometimes the riskiest thing you can possibly do is the right thing. And sometimes that's precisely why you must do it." There was a hush. Samuel and the chief held it together, lowering the shield into Lily's arms. As their fingers released, the tension seemed to change, like the earth itself had heard the choice just made. Bradley wheeled and strode off without a word, waiting for others to follow him. But they didn't. More townsfolk came forward instead, responding to something a lot more powerful than fear. Something which had waited an eternity to breathe. Mrs. Henderson placed her hand gently on Lily's shoulder. "Thank you," Chief Running Bear said, his voice thick with the emotion of a man carrying generations of pain. "You've given my granddaughter something more precious than safety. You've given her hope that maybe the world can be different." At that moment, a small figure emerged from the tribal procession. Anna. She approached with slow steps, head held high, eyes shining with new vigor. When she came to Lily, she spoke loudly for everyone to hear. "My grandfather said your name is like a lily flower," she stated softly. "In my language, my name is Eternal Blossom. Perhaps we were destined to be friends." Lily smiled. One-handed, she grasped Ayanna's hand. "Will you tell me more about all the symbols?" she requested. Together, the two girls turned to examine the old shield, one golden-haired, one dark-braided. Their small hands ran over the painted designs as onlookers gazed in awe. And in this simple instant, centuries of silence started to crumble. Samuel had tears running down his face before he knew they had escaped. Not for sorrow or terror, but for wonder. His daughter had accomplished what no sermon, no treaty, no speech had ever accomplished before. She had taught the town another way. Chief Running Bear raised his hand, and his people started dividing the gifts they had brought. Blankets for families who had been quietly generous, carvings for those who had never turned them away, food for anyone willing to eat. Sarah received a woven basket from one of the women of the tribe, who smiled and said, "Your daughter's heart calls to ours. This is how peace begins." And as the sun ascended further, something looser, more vibrant took over from the ceremony. Children from both sides clustered around Ayanna and Lily, curiosity overpowering inherited timidity. Adults also started speaking past boundaries they had previously believed to be eternal, finding common ground in stories, in laughter, in mourning. The shield would later be placed in the window of Clark's general store, where it would stay for generations. Travelers would pull in and inquire, and Samuel would recount the same tale of a 5-year-old girl who transformed 2 worlds with an open heart and a piece of bread. That day, Bradley lost customers. But Samuel won something much more enduring, the understanding that, when given the choice between profit and principle, he had acted as his daughter would have done. Years later, historians would record the surprising peace that grew up between the town and the border tribe. They would attribute it to a morning of gifts and questions, of courage and bread. But the people there would remember it differently. Not as politics, not as strategy, but as the day that a little girl taught them that kindness requires no translation, and that sometimes the smallest hands hold the most power.